So after the frustrations of Tuesday night, as a manager, as a person, how do you sort of process that? Do you brood for an amount of time? How does that manifest itself?
Well, it is. Yeah, it's difficult. Of course, it is, because I don't think anybody wants a result like that, and in the first half in particular, a really poor performance, where it begs the question why certain players don't really either want the ball or why they are prepared to let youngsters carry the can. I don't like that, and so there is an element of frustration, of course. There is some anger too, and clearly our fans weren't happy with it, and quite rightly so. But it's going to be important at the weekend that our fans stay with the players, but the players have got to give something to be enthusiastic about, and that's the big thing. And so it's very, very frustrating, and it's also a missed opportunity. So I think it was always going to be important. We've done it in the previous rounds to try and freshen the team up and give people opportunities. And for some, it was a missed opportunity. There were players who were selected who actually worked really hard throughout the game, but unfortunately, I'm not saying that everybody was in the same boat, but it was, those sorts of nights don't do us any favours whatsoever.
And players themselves obviously know when they haven't performed or they haven't done what it is that you're asking of them. Do you have to then sort of talk to them individually and point out what it is you need from them? How does that work with players?
Well, at the moment, it's now about turning our minds to the Watford game, and selection will, I think, probably speak for itself. I think I could waste a lot of time and energy now, still trying to. I don't have to try and justify what happened, because what happened, and it's my responsibility. So I don't shirk that responsibility at all. It's just it's infuriating that we allowed a good opportunity to pass us by, and I think that's the biggest frustration. So we've got one game before this break, and it's against a very good side who've got good players. So we need to be, we need to be at the top end of our performance. We can't allow what happened on Tuesday night to happen again. So it's really important that the players who are selected to start are show not just the qualities that they have, but the fighting qualities too, and that's really important for us. So that's it's going to be important that the players who are selected to start deliver individually, but more importantly collectively, because that's really what the biggest factor is that we need to have a look and a feel of a team, not isolate people.
Yeah, and there, certainly before the last international break, and since then, there have been plenty of performances where you've had that cohesion, you've had that team performance, but not as many as you would want since the last international break, have there?
We've had some good performances, and we've had games where we've probably not got what we deserve, and the game against Middlesbrough away, where on the balance of it, I think most people seeing that game would probably say that Middlesbrough deserved to win it. But what we did in that game was fight for everything, and I think that is, we can't do it one day and then not the next, and that's been our problem. And I think that we are very reliant on on a certain number of players who it's very clear are absolutely critical to us as a team, and when certain players don't play, we have not proved to have the strength that we all hoped that we would have through being able to perform. So that's a bit of a concern at the moment. Yeah.
And I guess within that, some of those ones that you have been hanging your hat on are ones that maybe from the outside you wouldn't necessarily expect, in that they're the younger members of the squad.
Look, I mean, we've got players who are they are really important to how we can play as a team. That doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to start, because I don't think that's particularly healthy either. And that's why it's really important for players, when they get opportunities, is to take them. And I mean, we've fallen short in that regard. So look, I'm not going to waste too much energy on this, because it is disappointing in many ways, very frustrating, but there's a job to do, and that is to get a performance, and more importantly get a positive result before we have this break.
Yeah, and because of that break, does it make it more important than just because every match is only ever 3 points, isn't it? But is it more important because of that, because of the way that the players, that fans, that staff will feel on the back of this?
I can only speak for myself, but I know that, in terms of, but my feeling is that there is a lot of shared frustration too. So the important thing is to try and get to choose the right team based on what we know we'll get from the players that we select. So there's an element of trust there.
Yeah. And with that, in terms of selection decisions, is there anybody who comes back into the fray from the injured who are getting closer?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And that's something which, I mean, I suppose in that regard, the break will give us an opportunity to get people back, but I'll think about that when the break actually comes. At the moment, all the energy needs to be focused on the Watford game, and it's fairly straightforward in my head.
Okay.
Like that.
So Watford are a team, obviously one of those that got relegated, have got some big name, big money players. Hasn't completely clicked, but actually just starting to show a little bit of form at the moment.
Yeah, they've got good players, and there's still a number of those players that are there from my time there. So I left there 2.5 years ago. I think they've had 6 managers since then, which is very Watford-esque. But a lot of the players remain. There are a lot of players who remain there. So. Some familiar faces, some that they've added. They've whatever people think of Watford and how they operate, they know what they're trying to do, and I think they've got a very realistic chance of bouncing back this year. It will be a tough game for us, but I also think it's one in which our players will want to do well in. So let's hope that turns out to be the case.
Yeah. And just finally, it was only a relatively short time that you were there. Do you look back with fond memories from that time?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, regardless of how it finished, which was how it seems to finish for most people, I went into the job knowing it was not probably going to be a long-term thing. So both Craig and myself, when we went there, enjoyed it for what it was, and it was a big challenge. And I think for the most part we really had a positive effect on the club. But you know, but Gino makes his decisions, and but I don't hold any grudges or bad feelings towards towards what happened now. I mean, at the time, yeah, I was not particularly happy, but it's just how it is, and I still keep in contact with some of the staff who, you know, there's some good people at that football club, and it'll be nice to catch up with them too. But the priority is, of course, our own performance and see if we can get ourselves going again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers.
When you kind of look at that Watford attack, Sarr and Pedro and Kieran Davis,
Yeah.
Premier League quality, arguably, and not bad options to have. What do you need to see from your side to be able to stop those having an influence on the game, especially someone like Sarr?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got to be prepared to be effective in 1v1 battles. You know, we've got to win enough 1v1 battles, and so João Pedro is very effective at dropping into the, if you like, the 10 position, and you know, that suits his style of play. I mean, when he signed, I was there when the club signed him, and he was one certainly for the future. So he was just a youngster then. He's still a young player now, but he's developing very well. And then they've got pace in wide areas too, and up top. So yeah, it'll be a test for us without doubt. But we also have, you know, hopefully in our midfield area, that's going to be a critical position for us too. So we need to carry that threat that we have on the counter attack, and so that, you know, it's important that we go into the game with a positive intent. So you know, I don't believe in going into games like this and it be just about being destructive, if you like, and trying to stop them. I think what we have to do is carry a positive threat ourselves, and so yeah, tough game, but it's also be a good test for us, and it's one that the players should look forward to.
Is it periods like this, difficult periods like this, that you can learn a lot about a player's characteristics, or they can learn about themselves?
I think what it does, it reaffirms things rather than, I mean, if you're alluding again to the Lincoln game, I mean, that was particularly poor. I think in the difficult run that we've had some pretty good performances, but we've not always got the results that maybe performances have warranted. But again, what's been the underlying factor have been, again, too many individual errors that have cost us. But it's that's something that we just have to continue to work at, and there's no quick fix on that. You know, whether we'll be able to do some trading remains to be seen, but that will only happen if players leave. Essentially, you know, there's not going to be. We're not, as a club, now going to change our strategy in terms of what we're trying to do. That is still to be competitive, but reduce costs. So whether I like it or anybody else likes it or not, that's where we are at the moment.
Are loans the most viable option then for?
Not necessarily, because I've been through this again, and good loans are expensive. Potentially, I'm not writing them off, because if we get an opportunity to do that, then in the right areas, fine. But the area that still needs addressing and that we've been unable to fill, and you know, and do the business that we would have all have liked, but couldn't do it in the summer, was still in defensive position. So our problems remain the same, because we've not been able to strengthen in that area. So, but look, that doesn't mean that the players that we have there, some have shown improvement and some just haven't. Some haven't stepped up, basically. And we've had unavailability as well, which is that's been the biggest problem for us in that area. That players who, the likes of Cal Naismith has not been available for a while now, and Cal has certainly with his performances improved us. But I think it's fair to say that he also had a positive influence on the players that he played alongside. So. It's not all. I mean, Cam Pring's come back in the side and done very well, and same with Zach. Zach's done better. So it's just it's frustrating in that regard.
Yeah, the form is obviously frustrating. There's an understandable frustration about it, but do you almost sometimes have to look at the bigger picture?
Look, whether we do or not. Now's not the time to start talking about that, because what we need to do is think short term, and that is we owe ourselves and we owe our fans a better performance than we had the other night. So whether looking at the bigger picture is the right thing to do or not, it's not the right thing for me to say in this press conference, because that smacks of trying to avoid the issue, and that is we've not performed this week, and we need to.
You spoke after Tuesday about you're going to pick a team that players that can rise to the challenge. How do you assess that this week in their response?
So selection is about whether players can do the job, but there's also going to be an element of trust involved. So, managers don't go forever on a run of bad results. I'm aware that this is probably going to be an important game, because otherwise, people might start wondering about what my position is. So I've invested too much time and energy in this job to allow players that probably don't really trust too much at the minute to play, and that's how I'll be approaching the game. I'll be blunt, so you didn't ask the question directly, but I know, but you're right to ask it, and you're very kind not to ask it in a blunt way. The bottom line is we need a result this week, simple as that. But like I've said, we have as a club invested too much in the strategy that we're adopting to ignore the work that we've put in. I mean, it's been a difficult 18 months in terms of trying to reshape it. Unfortunately, at the moment, we know that we need to make adjustments to the squad. It's just whether we can do it at this moment in time, and that's the big problem for us.
Need a result this week in regards to your position?
To maybe, I can't answer that, but I don't worry about that anyway. But no, about our finishing our part of the season, this part of the season, positively, because we've dropped down to 20th, which is not great, but it's just ridiculously tight. But we continue to throw points away that we shouldn't. And which means that we find ourselves dropping down the table when our aspirations are a lot higher than that. But managers ultimately carry the can, but there's a lot more to it than that.
In your opinion, what's one of the biggest catalysts of the change from before the international break when we went on that undefeated run and football was really exciting?
We've had players missing that we need and rely heavily on, and the depth of our squad has not when players have needed to perform, they've unfortunately not been able to have the same influence as key members of our squad. So it's unfortunate, but it's how it is. We've just got to get on with it, and that's why it's frustrating. It's even more frustrating. When players miss opportunities.
Talking about the squad depth, finally from me, how many players do you think you would need to bring in to be able to get it to a level that you would like?
Well, it doesn't. That's not really constructive of me to talk about, because we will always do as a club, and it's important to remember this. I operate as a manager here, doing what we agree is the right way forward. So I don't intend now to start putting demands out there. We know that we're short in certain areas, and what we'd like to do compared to what we can do at the moment is very different. So I'll just reiterate what I've already said, and that is we would need players to leave before we can do business to bring players in. So that's it. That's what it is. We still should be able to. We should be getting better results than what we've had, but we've continued to make errors which have cost us in games, and that's unfortunate for us.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
Just in regards to Brian Tinney being appointed technical director, does that change the makeup of the squad at all, of the club at all, or is it just straightforward?
What it does, it for Brian, and we're delighted for him, obviously. I think what it does, it gives him the ability to really reinforce the messages that I think we've been sending out anyway, and that is that it's important that for us to get the best out of our football club that needs real collaboration, and we've got that. So I just think it's a reward for Brian. I think it's a smart appointment by the club, and what it does now, it gives Brian the ability to operate in official capacity in what he's already doing, and that is working very closely with the first team operation, but also overseeing the academy and the recruitment, and he'll be important for us recruitment wise in the first team environment as well, because that's something that he's stepped into recently anyway, because I think that the recruitment for the club needs to be aligned. It's been scattergun for too long, and we've worked hard to try and get value for money, because we've wasted far too much, I'm afraid. So it's a smart appointment. It's reward for him. He's going to be here a damn sight longer than players or coaches or managers. So his association with the club goes back 30 years or so, doesn't it? Something like that. So he's very much aligned with what the club wants to achieve, and that is good.
And in regards to the recruitment, is it him that finds the targets and you green light, or is it like 50-50?
It doesn't work like no. I can't. No, we identify what we need, and then there is always a process of screening potential options, but the big thing is whether we can do it or not. So I've said before, I don't really want to replace a player that we think needs replacing with another one that we don't think is good enough, because that's another waste of money. So, at the minute, that's why we're going to have to tough it out until we can do the type of business that we know will improve us. But in the meantime, we continue to work and get the best out of the players that we have.
I think Lauren Smith is in Warner.
Yeah.
On the coach as well. Is that just her observing things? Is it a collaboration?
Lauren's great. She's done a great job here so far, and something for one of the courses that she's on, and I think it's always good to invite anybody who works for our club to be in and around how we work. I mean, she didn't bring us any luck, but no, I mean, I like how she works, and I like the way that she works too, and she's a smart football person. Let's put it like that.
And another person, I think you discussed sports interview, you said that Alex Bolton's position.
Yeah.
Does he perhaps he gets a better view of it, obviously, in that interview, but does he perhaps influence a decision in a way? Does he say that perhaps does that influence a sub if you get advice from him?
It's just to do with having eyes higher up that you can see what's happening on the pitch. So Alex worked with us last season, quite a lot with the first team. His role this season, we've made a position for him, so he's head of coaching, so he will oversee a lot of work that goes on in the academy in terms of how we work and what we do with the players. And of course then, because he's worked with the first team, again it's crossover, and I think that's beneficial for the young players who make the transition. And so look, what we saw the other night with Joe Lowe is the other end of the spectrum, where he'll come back from that because it was important to protect him at half time. But there's the other end of the spectrum from players making debuts and it all going really well. And for Joe, that was a tough experience, but he'll be fine. He will be fine because he's ambitious, disappointed with how it went against Lincoln. But this is why it's always difficult to get that. There's no actual one way of doing it with introducing youngsters. The further back you go on the field, of course, when you make a mistake, it becomes more costly. So strikers, maybe forwards, midfield players can have probably a bit more slack just because of where they play. But mistakes can be very costly when you're a centre back in particular, or a goalkeeper. So it's a tough experience.
And just lastly, obviously the work on the horizon.
Yeah.
If Antoine Santamaria isn't involved, obviously this will be able to be happening in mid-season. Do you afford him a break, or do you expect him to come back in after Garner's involved?
No, I expect him to come back in. Because we'll need him. That's international players. That's a part of what they are. That's if you're an international player, you can forget your long summer breaks, because that's when most of the tournaments are, or if there are competitions, friendlies, etc. So we talked last year, I think it was, or maybe the year before, about Thomas Callas with having 3, 4, 5 years of continual football, and it can have a considerable effect on long-term fitness. So the problem that Thomas has been dealing with this year is something that's been a problem that's developed over time.